Nestled in the heart of the Midwest, the suburban neighborhood of Willow Creek was the epitome of American tranquility. With its tree-lined streets, manicured lawns, and pristine sidewalks, it was the kind of place where families thrived, children played, and everyone knew their neighbors, or so it seemed. Beneath the surface of this idyllic community, however, lay a simmering tension, fueled by the iron-fisted rule of the Willow Creek Homeowners Association, HOA. At the helm of the HOA was Maggie Thompson, a woman whose reputation for micromanagement was legendary. Maggie, a retired school principal, had turned her attention to the neighborhood with the same zeal she once reserved for unruly students. Her obsession with rules and order had earned her the nickname, the Warden, among residents. From the height of grass to the color of mailboxes, Maggie's influence was everywhere, and her word was law. But Maggie's reign was about to be challenged in a way she never anticipated. Enter Daniel Carter, a 38-year-old electrical engineer who had recently moved to Willow Creek with his wife, Emily, and their 2 young children. Daniel worked for Midwest Power, one of the largest utility companies in the region. His job was critical, overseeing the maintenance and operation of the city's power grid, ensuring that electricity flowed seamlessly to hundreds of thousands of homes and businesses. Daniel was a quiet, unassuming man who preferred to keep his professional life separate from his personal one. He had no interest in neighborhood politics and simply wanted a peaceful place to raise his family. But his arrival in Willow Creek would soon disrupt the delicate balance of power in the community. It didn't take long for Maggie to notice Daniel. Within days of his moving in, she appeared at his doorstep, clipboard in hand, ready to deliver her standard welcome speech, which was more of a warning. "Mr. Carter," she began, her tone crisp and authoritative, "welcome to Willow Creek. I'm Maggie Thompson, the president of the HOA. I trust you've read the community guidelines." Daniel nodded politely, though he hadn't gotten around to reading the hefty packet of rules Maggie had left in his mailbox. "Yes, of course," he lied. Maggie's eyes narrowed as she glanced at his porch light, which was still on despite the bright afternoon sun. "I see you've left your exterior lighting on during daylight hours. That's a violation of HOA policy. Please ensure it's turned off by sunset." Daniel, caught off guard, stammered an apology. "Oh, I didn't realize. I'll make sure it's off." Maggie gave a curt nod and left, but Daniel could sense that this was just the beginning. Over the next few weeks, Maggie's visits became more frequent. She would appear at odd hours, scrutinizing Daniel's lawn, his mailbox, and even the placement of his trash cans. Each time, she left behind a sticky note or a formal notice, citing some obscure HOA rule. Daniel tried to comply, but Maggie's demands grew increasingly absurd. She accused him of using excessive wattage in his outdoor lights, even though he had installed energy-efficient LED bulbs. She claimed his children's toys left on the lawn were a public eyesore, despite the fact that they were neatly stored in a designated play area. Frustrated but determined to avoid conflict, Daniel did his best to appease Maggie. But her relentless harassment began to take a toll on his family. Emily, who had initially been excited about their new home, started to dread stepping outside, fearing another confrontation with the HOA president. The breaking point came one evening when Daniel hosted a small gathering for his colleagues from Midwest Power. As the group discussed an upcoming citywide power grid upgrade, Maggie stormed into his home Ted, her face flushed with anger. "Mr. Carter, your outdoor lights are blinding the entire neighborhood," she shouted, ignoring the stunned expressions of Daniel's guests. "Turn them off immediately." Daniel, trying to remain calm, explained that the lights were on for safety reasons, as some of his colleagues were still REVYing. But Maggie was unmoved. She threatened him with a hefty fine and a formal complaint to the HOA board. That night, as Daniel lay in bed, he realized that Maggie's vendetta was more than just petty rule enforcement. She was targeting him personally, and he needed to find a way to fight back. A few days later, Daniel returned home from a late shift to find his porch light shattered, the wiring ripped out. Security camera footage revealed a shadowy figure sneaking away, but the image was too blurry to identify the culprit. Daniel had his suspicions, but without concrete evidence, there was little he could do. Determined to catch Maggie in the act, Daniel enlisted the help of his friend, Alex, a security systems expert. Together, They installed high-resolution cameras and motion sensors around Daniel's property. They also set up a hidden camera across the street, disguised as part of a street lamp. The plan worked. A week later, just minutes before a scheduled neighborhood power outage, the cameras captured Maggie sneaking onto Daniel's property and attempting to unscrew his porch light. This time, the footage was crystal clear. Armed with undeniable evidence, Daniel filed a police report and sought a protective order against Maggie. He also presented the footage at the next HOA meeting, where Maggie's fellow board members were stunned into silence. The once untouchable HOA president was suspended pending further investigation. As the investigation unfolded, more of Maggie's misdeeds came to light. It turned out she had been using her position to line her own pockets, collecting fines from residents and pocketing a portion of the fees. She had also been illegally tampering with the neighborhood's electrical infrastructure, attempting to manipulate the power supply to suit her whims. The city's building inspection department discovered a hidden workshop in Maggie's garage, filled with unpermitted electrical equipment. She had been running a clandestine operation, experimenting with custom lighting solutions, and even siphoning power from the grid. The revelations were too much for the community to ignore. A class action lawsuit was filed against the HOA, and Maggie was charged with vandalism, trespassing, and utility fraud. Her reputation in tatters, she was forced to step down from the HOA board and put her house on the market. With Maggie gone, the atmosphere in Willow Creek changed almost overnight. Residents felt a newfound sense of freedom, no longer living in fear of petty fines and arbitrary rules. The HOA board, under new leadership, implemented reforms to ensure greater transparency and fairness. Daniel, meanwhile, continued his work at Midwest Power Light, grateful that his professional expertise had played a role in bringing Maggie to justice. He often reflected on the irony of the situation. The woman who had tried to control every aspect of her neighbors' lives had been undone by her own obsession with power. As for Daniel, he kept his porch lights on whenever he pleased, a small but symbolic act of defiance against the tyranny that had once ruled Willow Creek. And each time he flipped the switch, he was reminded of the importance of standing up for what's right, even in the face of overwhelming odds. Epilogue: The lesson. The saga of Maggie Thompson served as a cautionary tale for the residents of Willow Creek. It was a reminder that power, when wielded without accountability, could corrupt even the most seemingly benign institutions. But it also showed that when people come together to challenge injustice, they can bring about meaningful change. Daniel's story spread beyond the neighborhood, becoming a symbol of resilience and community spirit. And as for Maggie, she disappeared into obscurity, her name forever associated with the downfall of a once dominant figure who had forgotten that true power lies in serving others, not controlling them. In the weeks following Maggie's downfall, Willow Creek underwent a transformation. The oppressive atmosphere that had once hung over the neighborhood lifted, replaced by a sense of camaraderie and mutual respect. Neighbors who had previously avoided each other out of fear of Maggie's watchful eye now greeted one another warmly, sharing stories of how her reign had affected their lives. The HOA board, now led by a more compassionate and transparent leadership, worked to rebuild trust with the community. They held open forums where residents could voice their concerns and suggest improvements. One of the first changes was a complete overhaul of the HOA's bylaws, ensuring that rules were fair, reasonable, and aligned with city codes. Fines that had been unjustly levied under Maggie's rule were refunded, and a new committee was formed to review any future disputes. Daniel, though relieved, remained cautious. He knew that power vacuums could sometimes lead to new conflicts, and he was determined to ensure that Willow Creek didn't fall back into old habits. He became more involved in the HOA, not as a leader, but as a voice of reason, advocating for policies that balanced community standards with individual freedoms. The story of Maggie's downfall didn't stay confined to Willow Creek. News of the HOA president's misdeeds spread to neighboring communities, sparking conversations about the role of homeowner associations and the potential for abuse of power. Other HOAs began to reevaluate their own policies, and some even reached out to Willow Creek for advice on how to implement reforms. Daniel found himself in an unexpected position of influence. He was invited to speak at local town halls and community meetings, where he shared his experience and emphasized the importance of accountability and transparency in governance. His calm demeanor and thoughtful insights resonated with many, and he became a respected figure not just in Willow Creek, but throughout the region. Despite his newfound prominence, Daniel remained humble. He often reminded people that his role in Maggie's downfall had been a matter of circumstance rather than ambition. "I didn't set out to take down anyone," he would say. "I just wanted to live in peace and protect my family." Sometimes, standing up for what's right is the hardest thing to do, but it's always worth it. Just as life in Willow Creek seemed to be settling into a new normal, a fresh challenge emerged. A developer announced plans to build a large commercial complex on the outskirts of the neighborhood, threatening to disrupt the quiet, residential character of the area. The proposal included a shopping center, a gas station, and a 24-hour convenience store, all of which would bring increased traffic and noise. The news divided the community. Some residents welcomed the prospect of new amenities and potential increases in property values, while others feared the loss of the neighborhood's charm and the strain it would place on local infrastructure. The HOA board was once again at the center of the debate, tasked with representing the interests of all residents. Daniel, though wary of getting involved in another contentious issue, knew he couldn't stay silent. He organized a series of community meetings to facilitate open dialogue and ensure that everyone's voice was heard. He also reached out to city planners and environmental experts to gather information about the potential impact of the development. The fight over the commercial complex became a defining moment for Willow Creek. Residents who had once been divided by Maggie's petty rules now found themselves united in a common cause. They formed committees, drafted petitions, and even staged peaceful protests to make their concerns known. Daniel played a key role in coordinating these efforts, using his organizational skills and calm demeanor to keep the community focused and productive. He also leveraged his connections at Midwest Power Rallied to highlight the potential strain the development would place on the local power grid, adding weight to the argument against the project. After months of heated debate and negotiation, the developer agreed to scale back the project, removing the 24-hour convenience store and adding green spaces to mitigate the environmental impact. It wasn't a perfect solution, but it was a compromise that most residents could live with. The experience strengthened the bonds within the community, proving that they could come together to face challenges and effect change. It also solidified Daniel's reputation as a leader, though he continued to insist that he was just a concerned neighbor doing his part. With the commercial complex issue resolved, Willow Creek entered a new era of stability and growth. The HOA board, now a model of transparency and fairness, worked to foster a sense of community through events like block parties, gardening competitions, and charity drives. The neighborhood became known not just for its beautiful homes, but for its strong sense of unity and shared purpose. Daniel and his family thrived in this new environment. Emily, who had once dreaded stepping outside, now enjoyed hosting gatherings in their backyard, where neighbors would come together to share food, laughter, and stories. Their children, free to play without fear of violating some arbitrary rule, made friends and created memories that would last a lifetime. As for Daniel, he continued his work at Midwest Power Rallied, but he also found fulfillment in his role as a community advocate. He often reflected on how far Willow Creek had come, from a place of fear and division to one of hope and collaboration. Years later, as Daniel sat on his porch watching the sunset, he thought about the journey that had brought him and his community to this point. The lessons of Maggie's downfall and the battle over the commercial complex had left a lasting impact, not just on Willow Creek, but on him personally. He realized that true power wasn't about control or dominance, but about service and stewardship. It was about using one's skills and resources to uplift others and create a better future for everyone. Maggie's obsession with power had led to her downfall, but Daniel's commitment to fairness and community had helped Willow Creek thrive. As the first stars appeared in the evening sky, Daniel flipped the switch on his porch light, a small but meaningful act that symbolized the freedom and unity he and his neighbors had fought so hard to achieve. He smiled, knowing that the light would shine brightly, not just for his family, but for the entire community. The story of Willow Creek became a beacon of hope for other neighborhoods grappling with similar challenges. It was a reminder that even in the face of adversity, people have the power to come together, stand up for what's right, and create a brighter future. Daniel's journey, from a quiet engineer to a community leader, inspired others to take action in their own lives. His story was shared in local newspapers, on social media, and even in a documentary about grassroots activism. Though he never sought the spotlight, Daniel's impact was undeniable. As for Maggie, she faded into obscurity, her name rarely mentioned in Willow Creek. When it served as a cautionary tale, a reminder of the dangers of unchecked power and the importance of accountability. In the end, the light that guided Willow Creek wasn't just the glow of porch lights or street lamps. It was the light of community, resilience, and the unwavering belief that together, people can overcome even the darkest of times. If you were the one in this story, how would you react? Would you stand up and fight back, or accept the unreasonable pressure and control from the HOA? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this video with more people. Your small action gives us the motivation to keep bringing you more intense and engaging stories. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.